why do we have this webinar together, AI Academy and Design Sprint Academy? Well, it's quite simple. Like we're at Design Sprint Academy, we're specialized, as I was saying, in finding opportunities, innovation opportunities, big problems to solve using problem framing, and then we can help with design sprints to quickly find solutions and validate prototypes with customers. And obviously, like with AI, our customers came to us and said, like, can we run a design sprint for AI? Can we use these methods to come up with our first AI product? And naturally, my answer would be yes. That's why these methods exist, and they're like very good for this. However, in this case, when we're using these methods, it's more like a co-creation process with our customers. They bring in the domain expertise, we bring the framework, the process, we ensure that they're staying customer-centric, and we have good results. So one element when it comes to AI is missing. That's the expertise, because I am not an AI expert myself. I mean, I do my fair share of education, but it doesn't qualify me as an expert. Our customers are not experts either, right? Like they don't have these internal AI capabilities. So if I were to run design sprints with them, it would be a case of the blind leading the blind, which kind of doesn't make sense. So that's why we say like we need some more guidance. We want to make sure that we have good outcomes, and that's why we partner with AI Academy. So they bring this deep AI expertise to our user-centric innovation methods. So that's why we're doing this webinar together. And like what you're going to see in the next hour or so, it's the outcome of our collaboration. So the agenda for today is why are we doing this workshop? What is this about? And then we're going to share a blueprint for helping executives understand AI and launch their first AI projects with confidence. That's in a nutshell what we're going to do today. So let me start with a little bit of a story. When ChatGPT launched, the problem was, or the question that leaders posed was like, is this safe? Can we use it? Can we drop in our data, our expertise, our IP? Like, can we just share it somewhere and then be safe and feel confident about it? And pretty much they were not. I know we were working with some of our customers. We're trying to suggest all sorts of AI tools to help with ideation, with prototyping. They were like AI-based, and they were completely forbidden in their enterprise. So IT said no, legal said no. So that was the case a while ago. But like we're past that stage. And now what leaders are asking themselves is like, how can we create value with this? How do we leverage AI to create business opportunities and in the end, business value? So this is where we are today. But it's easier said than done, because finding the right areas of opportunities at the organizational level is challenging. Yes, you can have people trying ChatGPT or other tools right here and there, but this doesn't mean there is a change at an organizational level. It requires something a little bit more, and that's challenging for a few reasons. First of all, leaders need to assess their organization AI readiness, and that's something that shows on multiple dimensions, right? Like it's you need to take into account strategy. Are our AI initiatives aligned with organizational goals, with our objectives, right? And then organizations can be at different points in time. Some of them could be on the red, right? Like you can see in this example here, where there's a lack of a clear AI strategy. There's like nothing there, all the way to a positive status where you would have a well-defined AI strategy. I think there are like very, very few organizations that have that. Maybe Gianluca will tell us more about that. And then you need to look at process and governance. Do we have all of the processes? Do we have the people in place to run them? Do we have the frameworks, right? Is this the case? People and talent, right? It's people need to be able to use these new AI tools, because it requires a different skill set. It requires expertise, right? Like how are you going to develop the workforce in order to be able to use AI tools and run AI projects? Then there's data, probably one of the most important things. Do we have the right data? Do we have the right quality of data, right? Like, do we have access to this data, right? So all of these dimensions that you need to take into consideration. Some of the leaders might not even be aware that they need to look at so many different things before starting off AI initiatives. And it's not all. There's like just half of them. You still have technology, right? Do we have the infrastructure for AI? Do we have integration between AI systems and our current systems? And then a big one, culture. Is our organization ready? Because there's like organizations in which people simply reject AI tools, right? Like, so you need to overcome those objections so they can use it. And finally, it's ethics, right? Do we have the ethical guidelines in place so we ensure that AI is not misused? So it's a lot of things you need to look at, which can be quite overwhelming. And as I said, I don't think everyone is really aware of all of these dimensions. So that's one of the things. And then also, leaving that aside, you need to align on the right areas of opportunities when it comes to AI. And it's not easy because in an organization, your seniors, leaders, stakeholders, decision makers, they will want different things depending on where they come from. So I'll just give a few examples. You can have someone from finance, right? Their use cases would be maybe around fraud detection, prevention, personalized financial advice, customer service support, things like this. Then you have sales and marketing, which are more concerned with sales forecasting, with customer relationship, with automating sales and their campaigns. You have legal, who are all about compliance, right? They're looking at AI to do something with contracts, managing them. And then what else do we have? Supply chain. And we've had projects around supply chain. They want to do forecasting on the demand. They want to do predictive maintenance. They want to optimize logistics, manage their suppliers. So very, very different things. I'm not going to insist too much on this, but like, I think you get the idea, because we're asking, okay, let's do AI in our organization. Okay, but where and for what, right? Because we all want different things. So all of this, we're asking them to do all of this. And at the same time, you have to imagine that executives and leaders, they have different levels of understanding AI and different education in AI. And everyone is doing what they can. Some people are taking some formal education in AI. Maybe they're doing some trainings from vendors like AI Academy, who has like a very good curriculum on these sort of trainings. Other people might be close to AI experts. They're part of communities. They have some coaching. They have a friend, right? So they learn this way. I think everyone today also reads and is staying informed however they can. And very few have run pilots and start learning from that, right? So the levels vary a lot in the same room. So the organization expects and demands a lot when it comes to AI, right? Like from these leaders who need to make these decisions, because what they need to do is actually find out those areas of opportunities and those projects that create business value, but which are feasible at the same time. And making that decision, taking into account the circumstances I mentioned, it's not easy, because you can do very many things with AI. And here's just like a few examples. But like what's really, really important is that when we're starting an AI initiative inside an organization, there's alignment and clarity. And everyone is clear on what we want to do, what is the business value of that thing, and then how feasible it is, how can we actually implement it. And that's why we created the AI opportunity mapping workshop, right? Like it's a framework that helps executives understand AI and also launch their first AI projects with confidence. It's something we do for, as I was saying, for alignment, for education as well, right? So they can get an idea of what we need in order to move to AI. And I think I'm going to pass the ball to Gianluca, who can talk a lot better about this AI opportunity mapping workshop and what happens inside of it, which is going to be the bulk of this webinar. So Gianluca, let me just put your slides up. And
all right.
Up to you.
So now, imagine that you want to do everything that John has just described. So you want to put a few leaders of organization in one room and you want to try to start this journey to get your first AI proof of concepts, to try to create some business value, what do you need to do? So we have designed this workshop that has 3 goals: educate, ideate, and strategize. Why? Why do you need to do those 3 things? Well, I'm going to walk you later on through the details of this workshop and why they're important. I'm going to share some data with you. But before we do that, let's just try to get a sort of a high level understanding of why you need those 3 things. You need education because senior leaders need to take decisions on the direction of the company. AI is something that is transformative. How do you think you can take decisions on something so transformative without understanding it? That's particularly important in a field like AI that is super hyped. So everybody's gonna come to you. I'm sure that if there are executives in this room, you're gonna be bombarded with vendors that are trying to pitch AI capabilities. You're gonna read in the news all sort of things. So it's important that you build your own culture. You need to be able to understand those things, to identify what matters, what is true, and what it's maybe not true, or maybe this doesn't work for your company. But after you've done that, if we don't apply it, then it's just knowledge for the sake of knowledge. So after we've learned something, we need to ideate. We need to start thinking all those things that I've learned about those capabilities. What do they mean for my organization, for my department, for my business unit, whatever that is? And then we start thinking about those ideas. But again, ideas are nothing without an execution strategy. So you can have the best idea in the world, but if you don't think about how do you turn that idea into something that has business value, then that's not going to work out. So now I want to show you how we took those 3 goals and put them into a single training workshop, actually, because there's a clear goal at the end that lasts for 8 hours. So, and it's made, we usually divide it into 2 groups. Just to give you an idea how we designed this. I think it's interesting, and we're going to share some data about why this works. So we divide into 2 days, so 2 half days, basically. Each block is a couple of hours, okay? So just to give you an idea of how this works. We start with education, demystifying AI. AI is a technology that is very hard to misunderstand. Okay, so it's some of these things that you start playing around and you sort of get an idea of how does it work, but then there's other people, there's news again that just make it more foggy than it's supposed to be. So we can work together into trying to make it clear what can AI do, how does it work, and how can it be helpful. And I found this bit of data that I found interesting. It just really resonates with my experience. This is a research by McKinsey. They measured the percentage of companies in which senior leaders have a clear understanding of how Gen AI can create value for the business. And they found that the high performers have a much higher percentage of people who understand how AI can create value, which to me it almost sounds obvious, right? Like obviously, if you understand a technology, you're going to have a better impact, better results. But to me, it's still surprising how many people are not investing in their own education, in their own understanding. That has to be the foundation of your strategy, your clear understanding of this. And by the way, little side note, one thing that we're noticing is executives come back to us after those sort of sessions, and they thank us not just because of the value that they're going to get from the projects, but also because it boosts their confidence. If you're a leader, you're going to have to talk about this stuff with a lot of people within your organization and outside of your organization too. And just having a clear understanding of how it works, it's just a great ROI. Another thing that I want to add is, well, if you don't know how this technology works, you can actually end up damaging your business. Think about how many decisions you're going to have to take within the next few years on artificial intelligence, which projects to invest on, which vendors to choose, which people to hire even. If you don't understand this technology, you risk taking the wrong decisions, and that's something we want to avoid. So within the workshop, we started with this couple of hours, very straightforward, easy. So try to get the 80-20 ratio of what you need to understand. And then we move into AI opportunities. So after you understand how AI works, you start looking into opportunities for your business. And here, I want to share with you one of my favorite case studies. We're just going to go through a couple of data points. It's a fairly long piece of research, but just going to select a couple of things that I want you to look at. So this research is done by Harvard Business School together with the Boston Consulting Group. This is the title of the research paper. In case you want to go and read it, feel free to take a screenshot and just look for the title, or we can share the link later. But what these people were trying to do was they were trying to understand which use cases are within the frontier of what AI can do and which use cases are outside the frontier of what AI can do. So basically, what things can bring business value and what things cannot bring business value. Again, we're not going to go super deep, but I want to show you one data point that for me was pretty mind-blowing. The first one is what happens if you use AI in the right way for the right use cases, the ones that are inside the frontier. And this is pretty mind-blowing to me. They measured the impact on quality of the work output of people. And they found that some people were getting a 43% boost in performance. Some people were getting a 17 boost in performance, depending on how skilled they were. Now, there's a lot of different things that we can say about this graph, but I just want to focus on the simplest message here, which is this is a substantial improvement in performance. All right. Boston Consulting Group is, top-notch consulting firm getting even just a 17. So even if we go for the worst case scenario, a 17 boost in performance is pretty mind-blowing if you use AI in the right way. But then these researchers went a step forward and they said, okay, let's see what happens if we use AI for the wrong use cases. So those consultants had to pick between 1 and 3 options, and some consultants had to use AI to get help. Some others did not use AI to do that. What happened then? Basically, the recommendation quality became worse. So when people started to use AI, 21%, depending on the which kind of people you started to look at, people started to get to recommend the wrong thing. So AI made them perform worse. What does this tell us, though? Does it tell us that AI doesn't work? No, this is not the message here. The message here is that if you use AI for the wrong things, you're going to be in trouble. If you use AI for the right things, if you find the right opportunities, then your company can significantly benefit from this. So it's really important that you understand where to use it and where to avoid. And that's what we do in the second part of this workshop. If we move to the third part of this workshop, so now we have talked about AI opportunities, now it's time to go deep into your specific organization. This is where we will start taking in all the elements that John was referring to before. We start trying to look at where do you see that you have the best data? Where do you see that you have the best opportunities? Where do you have the best people? Where do you have the easiest way to test this on the market? And we try to prioritize your opportunities. So typically after the second session, the AI opportunities one, you're going to find a list of potential ideas of things that you should try and things you shouldn't try, okay? And after the third session, you're going to have a clear prioritization on where you should start focusing your energies on. So the message that I want to give you here is this is what you have to do. You have to think about what AI can do, what are your opportunities, and what is at the intersection. If you're capable of doing this, that's really when you do magic, and that's what we want to help you do when we get to the end of that third block. Now, this is also something that from the same McKinsey research that I was sharing before. Again, the Gen AI high performers seem to have this clear advantage and clear focus on finding the right project for today, the right prioritization. They're able to understand which project can be built later on because it maybe they're not ready yet, and which project should be tackled right now. That's super important. It's something we want to help you get done as well. Now, the last part of this workshop is I think it's something that's really important. It's about scaling. So typically, you may have seen this before. When you do a hackathon or when you do experimentation, it's really hard to find something that has business value, but it also has potential to scale. It has potential to have a big impact on your organization. And that's why we want to address this really at the beginning. So we want to start thinking about all these opportunities that we found. Is there an opportunity? Is there a roadmap that we can see to have a big impact? Not just a small proof of concept, but something that could potentially, with the right resources, with the right time, become something big that impacts our organization. And so I want to end with this sort of a motto almost. You need to start small, but you have to aim big. That's what we want to do. And this amazing, I think it's a very simple representation of how an MVP should look like. If you want to build a car, your first version shouldn't be a single wheel because that's useless. So what you need to do is you need to start with something that is useful from the beginning. That's the kind of prioritization that you need to make. Something that you can use immediately so you can get buy-in from the rest of the stakeholders in your organization. You can start getting value immediately. You can, start seeing something. And also, honestly, from an emotional point of view, it's pretty nice to start seeing results in 2 months rather than in 2 years, right? It's pretty, it's nice. I think everybody can empathize with that. So you can start seeing value immediately, but you already need to have in your mind an idea that this little skateboard that we're building can become a real car at some point. And that's why we talk about this on basically on day one. We talk about this at the beginning because that's really important. And a lot of companies fail because they start small, but they don't think big. All right. So this is how we will spend basically the first 2 days together, going from maybe a vague understanding of what AI is and what AI can do, up to having a clear roadmap, some prioritization done, and which I really care about, the solid foundation of understanding what AI can truly do and what instead is just hype. And we want to just keep out of the door potentially, right? So this is where we are. Now I'll pass the ball again to John to talk about what happens then after this workshop.
Good. So we have this. Oh, these are like all of your slides, which I need to kind of like fast forward here. Everyone has seen them. Sorry, these are like some technical quirks. They happen from time to time. So I just want to share our blueprint because this AI opportunity mapping workshop is just the first step in this journey. So if we're thinking that like your ultimate goal is I want to successfully integrate AI into my organization, right? Like let's reverse engineer what needs to happen if this is if this is the goal. The first step is strategic alignment and buy-in, right? And that typically happens at the C-level, right? At the boardroom level. It's your like most senior decision makers who need to, who need to agree, who need to buy into this. And then once this is done, right, because a top-down approach is much better, then you need to move into the next phase, which is problem validation. AI is an amazing technology, but it's still just a technology. We still want to make sure that we're solving real business and customer problems. And finding those problems, those worthwhile problems, is something that we can do by at a business unit level involving the next tier of management. And then finally, once we have the problems, once we have a very clear idea of what we're trying to solve, we need to come up and validate solutions. And here is where you typically involve your employees, experts, anyone who's a problem solver and has the skills to work on that problem. To come up with proof of concepts. How does it happen in practice? Well, the first step with the leadership for strategic alignment and buy-in, that's the AI opportunity mapping workshop. As Gianluca said, like through a blend of education where leaders would listen to case studies, understand AI, right, and how it relates to the organization, they would agree on broad area of opportunities for AI projects. But they're still very broad because we're still at a very high level, but like it's a very good starting point. Once we have that, we're moving on to the next level and diving into one of these opportunities or all, right? Like there's a prioritization there. We start finding or searching for use cases within those big buckets. In order to do that, we're using a problem framing process, and I'm like very quickly going to give you an overview of what it is. But like anyway, at the end of this stage where we would involve middle management, right, and leaders, we would define very clear use cases for AI, think problem statements or opportunity statements. And then once we have that, right, so far we have a check mark on strategic alignment and buy-in. We have validated some problems for where AI could help. And then finally, we need to validate solutions. But in order to, and here is where we involve, as I was saying, people in the company, domain experts, employees, so on and so forth. But like in order to do that, they still require a little bit of an extra skill I want to say. So yes, they do have their domain expertise, but we want to enhance that with a little bit of AI education. And maybe Gianluca will talk a little bit about that in a second. And then with these people, we're going to engage them in very concentrated AI design sprint workshops, during which people are coming up with user-validated AI prototypes and proof of concepts. So if you're looking at this entire blueprint, it's a top-down approach. And it's, I think it's very important to notice that you have to involve the right people at the right moment. Right, so we're not going to start an AI deployment with the stuff, hey, let's all use ChatGPT for our task today, because that will not have a big impact. We're starting at the very top with like big area of opportunities, moving down to concrete use cases, and then using experts within the companies who are solving those and come up with the AI prototypes. Very, very briefly, I just want to give you an idea of what problem framing and design sprints are. So problem framing is an approach we have developed. It's a one-day strategic workshop where key decision makers understand the problem and the context, and then they can define clear opportunity statements. In problem framing, using multiple frames, we're looking at the problem from multiple perspectives, like what is the business perspective, who is our customer, our users, what's their problem, what do they care about, and then finally, we're looking at the entire context, usually using this sort of maps, visualizations, because we want to see where we have our blind spots and our opportunities. At the end of a one-day workshop like this, where we involve business leaders, as I was saying, at a middle management level, people who are close to the problem, we end up with very, very clear problem statements. And then the next phase is going to be the design sprint. And the design sprint, for those of you who don't know, this is a very structured innovation method. It was developed at Google to solve complex problems. It takes 4 or 5 days. At the end of this process, you end up with a prototype. So what typically happens is the team, and here are teams of cross-functional experts. So it's going to, in an AI design sprint, you want to have a good mix of domain experts on whatever the problem is, and then also AI expertise in the room. And then day one, they will all understand the problem even better and then define a goal. This is what success looks like. Day two, they're all going to come up individually with solutions and then decide on the best ones. And day three, we're going to use to build a realistic prototype. And in this case, we're talking more, not like clickable prototypes or static prototypes. We're talking more about working proof of concepts. Gianluca will share a couple of examples right after. And then day four, you take those working prototypes and you test them with real users. So you get validation before you invest into really building it. Right, so that's what happens in a design sprint, and in the end, this is the entire approach, moving from nothing to all the way to having a few working AI prototypes. And now, speaking of these AI prototypes, I mentioned they're closer to working proof of concepts, and I will let Gianluca talk a little bit about how that happens. Like, is it possible, Gianluca, to do this in one day with a team? Like, tell us. And I'm just going to
Yeah.
move this.
So a little back note. So for background, again, I was doing this 10 years ago, and 10 years ago, I remember, just a little backstory, let's say, if you wanted to build any AI prototype, any AI integration, you needed technical skills, you needed data, you needed time. It was really hard to do proof of concepts. And so I will talk about, a 2 weeks proof of concept. And that was tight, okay? Ideally, you would try to build something usable in a few months. So let's see how the world has changed with Gen AI. And if with the right skills, the right strategy, and most of all, the right problem framing, I always say a problem well framed is a problem half solved. So if you have a good framing of that, what can you do? And I'm going to share with you a case study, a real case study. So this is something that I'm very happy that I finally can share because it's been released publicly, and it's a project that I worked on with a company called Star. They're in Germany. If you have ever seen a billboard in Germany, chances are that they managed a billboard and they put that advertisement over there. All right. So they have if I remember correctly, more than 10,000 employees, fairly large company. And so recently, you can see the date, 7th of June 2024, they released this, and just made this press release about this new technology they have developed. And it's to analyze AI, to use AI to analyze graphics that are going to go in out-of-home advertising. And I want to tell you the story of how this project came along and also what the project actually is, so you can see actually how it works. So the challenge that they had was that often clients send bad poster designs that limit their efficacy. What does this mean? Imagine your business is to take designs from advertisement from companies and stick them on a billboard, right? And you get paid for this. And obviously, if the client gets good results, they're happy and they're gonna come back, right? If nobody buys the product the customer has advertised, then they're not gonna come back because they're gonna think that out-of-home advertising doesn't work. The problem is if you get an advertisement that looks like this, well, chances are that this company, which I can't even find the name anywhere, is not going to be able to sell. Now, put yourself in the shoes of Stroyer, the company we're talking about. Well, your business is not to do graphic design. So if you get something like this, you don't have a lot of space to go back to the client and say, hey, look, maybe we should redesign it for you. You cannot do that consulting service. And so that's what we were trying to understand. What we were trying to understand is whether we could use AI to potentially help Stroyer's customers get feedback on their designs and know whether they're good or bad. Obviously, that's a capability that they just didn't have the bandwidth. They were not set up to do this. But maybe with AI, they could do it at scale without too much resources. So the solution they thought about is the following. We did all innovation workshop together, lasted a few hours, and we identified that they had a key asset. They had already created a set of guidelines called the 10 golden rules for poster design. Now, for me, it was so interesting because when I saw them, I thought, you guys already created the instructions for an AI bot to perform this activity. You didn't know, but now that we looked at it together, you already did half of the work for me, basically. And so we decided to try out what at the time was a new technology. I still remember the moment that we tested this, GPT-4 Vision is capable of analyzing images, had been released like a week before or something like this. It was very new technology. And so we didn't know whether this was going to work, but we thought that this was the right time to test it. A little workshop, something to try out, okay? So what we did is, I'm not going to show the full prompt, but I want to show you what we did in this first few hours workshop. We literally just wrote a good prompt, starting from their intellectual property, and I here blurred some of the prompt because obviously these are some of their rules. But to give an idea of what we were trying to get, we posted a little ad and we tried to check whether it could potentially work, and we got some pretty good outputs. So in this case, again, I'm blurring some of the output, but the AI was capable of correctly understanding one of those 10 golden rules, understanding our instructions, and I say understanding with air quotes. It doesn't truly understand what we're doing, but it was capable of doing the task correctly. And we also checked it with some, just to give you an idea, with some bad poster designs. We did some testing. Obviously, it was not very extensive. It was not enough to put this into production, to be very pragmatic. But was it enough to gain confidence that this could work? 100%. It was enough to get something that worked and that we could show to all the stakeholders, build upon it, gain some buy-in, potentially even show it to customers. So what did we do after this? I think this lasted, if I remember correctly, I think in 4 hours we got to something that was pretty much working, all right? So the next steps were, they went through a rigorous testing process to make sure that they have reliable prompts. We want to make sure, this is key in prompt engineering, all right? A lot of people say they do prompt engineering. They actually do something that I like to call prompt crafting. But they just like to write prompts that look good, but engineering has a meaning to me, okay? As an engineer, engineering means that you need to be sure that your prompt is reliable. So that's what they did. They went back to back to their office the next day after this proof of concept. They kept trying it and they refined the prompts until they worked well. Then they built a simple prototype using no-code tools. And this to me was amazing because a lot of companies get stuck into very long bureaucratic IT processes to get something off the ground. Whereas they decided to have a very quick, smart approach to just try it out. So they use these no-code tools. You send a graphic, an image to an email address that triggered an automation, then going to report back in roughly 5 minutes. So this was enough to test it with clients and get feedback. See whether people liked it, whether it was clear, again, whether it was reliable, etc., etc. Then they started to get into IT and get into all the data security stuff that it's really important, but notice how it just comes later. First, we want to make sure that it's actually technically feasible and it brings business value. It's actually solving a real problem for real humans that we could potentially generate some business value from. So what can we learn from this? What are the key points that I want you to bring home from this proof of concepts? The first thing is, so Stroer really did a good job at thinking big, but starting small, okay? So they started with a very simple prototype. Again, it was a bunch of ChatGPT prompts, nothing fancy, but it was enough to get some, yes, this could work, which is great. But then they also thought big. They thought about something that could potentially have a huge impact on their organization. And just saw a question from Sylvia, who said, which no-code tools did they use? They use a few different ones. I think we started from Zapier. We use make.com as well. But again, I would strongly encourage to not focus too much on the exact tool that you're using. It's the concept that matters. The concept that matters is trying to understand, try to get to something shareable quickly, all right? But if you want to experiment with no-code tools, try Zapier and make.com. They're really good. I'm a bit biased. I really like make.com. The second thing that I think is interesting to look at is what they did is they tried to find inefficient processes that ruin the customer experience. It was very hard for their customers to get feedback on their designs. They had to wait a lot, and it was also expensive. And try to find win-win scenarios. That's something I think is amazing. Think about this. This project creates value for both sides of the equation, for Stroer and for the customer, which is pretty amazing, right? Another thing that I want to say is, imagine if they or I didn't read the news the week before and I didn't know that GPT-4 Vision was released. We would have not built this project. So AI changes constantly. What today looks like sci-fi, looks like out of a science fiction movie, tomorrow can become a commodity. So if you're on top, if you're starting early and are really trying to stay on top of what technology is, you can actually start building a serious competitive advantage compared to your competitors. All right. So that's the last message they want to give you. Again, to summarize, think big, start small. Don't be too ambitious at the beginning. The first proof of concept can be something very tiny as long as it brings some value. Look for inefficient processes where you can build some win-win scenarios for you and your customers. Customers is I mean customers from a very broad perspective. It could be an internal customer, all right, if you want to build something for internal use. And always stay up to date because, again, technology may be solving some problems that you've had for a while and is making something possible today that yesterday was completely out of reach. So these are my key points of how you can build a proof of concept in a very short amount of time and bring real value to your business. I'm going to hand it over back to you, John.
Put my slide up. Right, so I want to end this webinar with like a summary and just showing you the blueprint for AI adoption. Actually, Gianluca just said it before, aim, start small, but aim big. And this is what this approach is about. Even like the first step, an alignment workshop with C-level executives, it's a small step. Yes, it might be challenging to get everyone in the room, but like it's a one day that has a lot of benefits. And then every step of the way, it's a small step. We need to validate a problem with a select group of people. And then we run a design sprint. It's short, but then we get a working proof of concept. We show value, and then you can move into scaling and execution. So that's our blueprint for AI adoption. And then the first step, as we said, it's the AI opportunity mapping workshop, which is something that we, Gianluca and I, Design Sprint Academy and AI Academy, are facilitating. It's for leaders to get educated on AI and make first decisions on AI projects. Now, I think we're at the end of this webinar with our presentation, but then if you have any questions, we can still be here for a while to answer them. So let's say I'm checking LinkedIn. Any questions? Or maybe it's a challenging topic. I have someone raising the hand, Arthur, but Arthur, can you just write it in the chat? I think it's easier because the mics are not enabled for participants. Sure. Okay. I'm just wondering with this way of working, where the idea of local context comes in. I think I need a little bit more context on, on the question. Oh yeah, I mean, so to answer Arthur's question about the local context, that's something that we're doing a lot in problem framing and in the design sprints, especially in problem framing, where we're looking at the context. We're building journey maps, which could be customer user journeys or could be process blueprints. So context is very important. It's something that we put in front of the leader so they can make the best decisions. I think that's the answer to the question. And sorry, it was Sue, not Arthur. Ramona is asking, Gianluca talked about 2 days workshop. John concluded with a 1-day workshop for the AI opportunity mapping workshop. Yes, we can run it as 2 half days or as a full day. We prefer it as 2 half days because in between the sessions, leaders can sleep on the information that they just learned, and it's easier to make decisions the second morning. But then if it doesn't work logistically for you, we can do it in 1 day, right? So it's a 1 day. In the end, it's 8 hours of workshops. That's how you need to look at it. Sylvia is asking, can you go a bit more in detail on the activities that compose the workshop? I'm going to start, and then I will let Gianluca fill in. But like in this workshop, the education part, it's mostly case studies from different domains. We do pick the case studies based on the organization and the industry we're working on, so they're like as relevant as possible. But the idea here is that leaders are getting involved with these case studies. They can see how others have used AI, and that automatically triggers ideas for them. So at the end of each case study, and some of them are very interactive. Gianluca, you can talk about the Titanic here. They can be very interactive, but at the end of each case study, we have like a reflection time where everyone starts brainstorm, okay, how can we use what we've learned for our company? So they already start ideating. And in this process, we're identifying opportunities, we're identifying risks, we're identifying needed capabilities for AI. So this is basically how the workshop goes on the education part. Gianluca, do you want to add anything here?
Yeah, no, I think you made that great point. I think one thing that I do want to say is it's really important for me, even if it's executive education, that it's very practical. Like I think very often executive education stays too high level, and then people don't get their heads what does that mean? It means people don't get a practical, concrete understanding of what AI can actually do, and it's really hard to think about a project, think about value, if you haven't experienced firsthand how AI works and what it can do. So that's a little bit the approach that we follow. And then I think the beauty of that workshop, we mix some of the sort of best methodologies for executive training, the Harvard methodology, which is what I follow, with some of the best methodologies in design. So we work with different ways to vote on which ideas they think has this value, which ideas they support, which ideas they want to sponsor, etc., etc. So that is how we structure this workshop.
Okay.
Lot of questions. I don't know. So I just saw somebody else if I could write down the tools that I mentioned. I cannot type in the chat for some reason, but I can just spell it. Make.com, make.com, and Zapier, Zapier.com. I also want to address one other question, which is how can customers manage the challenge the feasibility of AI use cases might change very quickly? So they might have stopped the investigation and new features might work some weeks, months later easily. This is a great question. So first of all, one thing that is important is technology is not going to go backwards, right? So if you invest in something now, in some technology now, it's not going to happen. This technology is not going to be feasible anymore later on. There is an argument for regulation, where especially in the European Union, some laws are, may potentially make an application less easy to bring into the market later on, but we already have some guidelines. I think this is a great argument to start now. So since AI evolves so fast, the more you wait, the more you're missing out, basically, right? So some people may say, well, but AI, some technology may become easier to use in 6 months. I agree, I understand. But if you keep making this argument, you're never going to start, right? So AI can already do a lot of things. That's why I recommend don't wait too much. We have already enough capabilities, already enough democratic, and the regulation is already clear enough to keep the risk fairly low, or at least manageable. So you can know in advance what could happen from a regulatory and technological point of view.
I'm going to take a couple of other questions in no particular. I was muted when I was answering Simon's question. So Simon, I was saying that bottom up for me is when you start with your staff, with your employees using ChatGPT for certain things, which has value, but like it will not make a big impact. That's why you need a top-down approach, right? Like you need that executive buy-in so you can focus on areas of opportunities to get the resources and just to have the support for implementation afterwards. Yes, of course, like target customers are a main focus, and that's why we're doing design sprints. That's why we're doing problem framing, to make sure that we're solving a real customer problem. We're doing a design sprint to test a prototype with a customer. So they're very, very much involved in the process. But in order to get this started, we need to start at the very top, just to make sure that it can also scale. So I'm hoping this answered the question here. And I saw another one, this one from Laura. We are in the public sector in Scotland and are aligned to national government strategies on AI, a little bit more conservative approach. How can we encourage small tests of change? Of course, this is very contextual and it depends on the environment in which you're working in. But I would say the same approach works. Like find your stakeholders to involve in AI opportunity mapping workshop. Find your managers to involve in problem framing workshops to find problems you want to solve, and then run a small experiment like a design sprint to come up with a working proof of concept. And Gianluca presented one that was created in 4 hours. I mean, you can say like, this is what we've done, but like, it's really important that these proof of concepts are focused on real problems. That's how you're going to get the buy-in. I don't think you're ever going to get the buy-in presenting random stuff. Hey, this is a chatbot who can do X. Why do we care, right? So I would say the same approach works. And maybe Gianluca can answer this. What makes your workshop unique, or let's say differentiating it from other ones out there? So what makes it unique, Gianluca?
Oh my God, I love this.
I can share what I think it makes it unique, but like you start here.
All right. So I think, Jordan, you have to put a mute on StreamYard. Cool. Otherwise, I hear that and I think everybody else does too. Yeah. So, gosh, this is a really good point. It's so interesting to me because I see other organizations, there are two different extremes. There's some people that stay so high level especially when they do executive education, talk about strategy, they talk about roadmaps, but it lacks so what do we do now? It lacks action. It stays too much in your brain and less in, okay, let's actually build something. On the other extreme, I found some people these are the people who, now they're selling AI workshops or different things, but maybe a year and a half ago, they were selling crypto courses or things like that, So they get too fast on the let's build things, and you end up building stuff that doesn't actually have any business impact, or you're completely underutilizing what AI can do, right? Because you're talking to people that don't have that experience. I think what makes us a workshop unique is that we found a really great space to combine the best of executive education so that top leaders have a clear understanding of what AI is and where AI can take their organization, but with a very pragmatic approach that can bring the business results. And that's built on top of, again, I think, I don't remember John and Dana for how long you've been running the science sprints, but I remember it was a lot of time. And me doing this AI work for 10 years, I think that's what makes us unique. Again, this experience that comes in one place and brings the best of executive and education strategy with a very pragmatic approach that can actually bring business results and doesn't end up just in a bunch of slides that are nice, but they don't bring the value. What do you think, John? What's your take on this?
I mean, I think you said it. It's very outcome based, I would say, right? Like we have something to show for every step of this process. AI opportunity mapping workshops ends with a direction. We pick up from that direction, we take it into problem framing. Actually, next week I'll be running one of these problem framing workshop based on an AI opportunity mapping workshop Gianluca and I did the other month. And then from there, we're moving on to the next step, which ends up with a result. So you're moving from zero to a tangible prototype, something that's tested by your customers in a very short period of time. I think that's one thing that makes it unique. We don't end with I don't know, a wall full of post-its and a workshop and that's that. It's a roadmap, it's a blueprint, it's action driven. And we're going to share more in our next webinar because we're currently doing a few of these projects, and we can't wait to show even more case studies and results that we got. I did saw there a question about ROI, which I didn't get to answer, but like in the next webinar for sure. So thank you all for joining us today. And if you want to learn more, if you have more questions, or you're just interested in this approach, feel free to get in touch with us. Thank you so much. Thank you, Gianluca.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.